OneJustice is a statewide nonprofit that brings life-changing legal help to poor and other underserved Californians throughout the state. The board has made sort of fundamental, bold choices in 3 core areas. That strategic planning moment, including then renaming and rebranding. And then after that, looking at the board's own approach to governance and composition and structure. And then finally, most recently, their embracing of the board's role in revenue model and really just fundraising.
Some of the big questions the board was facing 3 to 5 years ago really got at why the organization existed at all. When we did surveys of stakeholders and recipients of our services, it was shocking. Some of them could barely recall us or had no idea what we did.
Some programs just had outlived their relevance. They were, the hot program and very much needed at the time they were initiated, but 5 years, 10 years later, the relevance just wasn't there as much.
The board faced those questions head on, and we helped guide the organization from a fairly diffuse set of 6 pretty disparate focus areas to 2. One of the biggest decisions, certainly in my 5 years on the board, was around renaming and rebranding the organization.
We had been the public interest clearinghouse since 1979 when the organization was founded.
And the name no longer reflected the mission of the organization and frankly led to some of the confusion both in stakeholders and on staff. Ultimately, it was a consensus-driven process that resulted in a very strong name, we feel, OneJustice.
The board realized that it had to look seriously at its own role in terms of governing and leading the organization. They actually created a small committee that would work specifically on the board governance and sort of the board's own professional development.
The board's governance committee has really upped its game. There is a lot of communication now between the governance committee, the executive committee, and the board as a whole to understand what the strategic objectives are for the organization for the next 3 to 5 years, and to really think carefully about what kind of board we need in order to support the organization's goals.
I think it's an important part of our overall governance process in not taking for granted our board members, but working with them and collaborating with them in coming to agreement on what each board member's strengths are and how those can best be used on behalf of the organization.
So there is a huge connection now, a very tangible connection between what the organization needs and what the governance committee is evaluating for, both in existing members and in potential candidates.
I was introduced to the board at a single meeting where we had gone through and developed some of the analysis and talked about how to really rethink the revenue model and where to focus. And I'd never been in a single board meeting where I saw a board take to it immediately and learn it and just incorporate it, and people were charged.
The way in which the board has engaged in fundraising in the last couple of years, I think again emphasizes the ability of the board to ask the big questions and take on the big challenges.
Frankly, we were not a big fundraising board. We had a lot of ideas, we had a lot of commitment, and we dedicated a lot of time to the organization, but that historically within the organization had not been a strength or a role or a large part of being a board member.
They invested in their own professional development, they brought in trainers, they made individual commitments about what they would do, they set organizational goals.
We went, I think in fiscal year 2011, from about $60,000 or $70,000 raised by board members to $120,000 raised in fiscal year 2012. And we have set really aggressive goals for ourselves this year for fiscal year 13, which we are very excited about achieving.
I think of OneJustice as a learning organization because it's a group of people that's never satisfied with the status quo, that always wants to learn best practice, that's willing to apply it, that's willing to say we've made mistakes and move on to a higher plateau. And I see that in the staff, I see that in the board, I see that throughout the leadership.